Hi, welcome back to the channel and my new video talking about the 5 worst movies we had in 2024. Now, I was going to do a bottom 10, but looking at my list of films that I saw this year, once it got to like my 10 and number 9 choices, they were actually still movies I would be positive on, that I actually still did like, so I didn't feel right putting them on a worst movies of the year list. So just going to be talking about my bottom 5 movies, but do bear in mind that I don't actively go out and try and see movies that I don't like. You know, I do this as a hobby, so I don't try and see movies that I know that I'm going to hate. Rebel Moon's Part 2, The Scargiver, wasn't going to see that. I heard it was absolutely terrible, and I didn't even think the first part was anything to write home about. So you're not going to see that here. And Craven the Hunter that came out recently, I was just like, I'm not doing it. Not doing it. You know, this movie has basically now killed the Sony Spider-Man universe. I heard it was absolutely atrocious as well. And after Madam Web, I was like, yeah, I'm done with these movies. So those two are not going to be on this list, though I'm sure they would have made it had I seen them. So I've got one what I guess would be a dishonorable mention for this list, and that is Roadhouse. Just because this movie, whilst it is terrible, I did kind of have fun watching it. It's almost funny for how bad it is. Conor McGregor cast in the role, absolutely laughable. His acting is just oof. It's kind of funny to watch. No idea why they decided to remake this movie from the late 80s. I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal is so much better than this film. It just feels like a waste of time him doing a project like this. And whilst I did have some fun with it, I still could never call this a good movie because they aren't good characters. The conflict is not interesting. It's basically just entertaining for laughing at most of the elements put into this film. So a huge waste of time, but I did at least laugh a handful of times. So that's my dishonourable mention. So now I'm going to get into my bottom 5 films of the year, in my opinion, by the way. And please do let me know your thoughts on my choices and also give me your worst films down below. So at number 5, unfortunately, I had to go with Joker Folie à Deux. And I know this has kind of split audiences a little bit just because it is a very strange and unique film and a direction that nobody expected it to go in. So I can understand why it does have its fans. You know, my 2 YouTube pals that I did my Ridley Scott ranking with recently, Clayton and Brian Lomax, they both absolutely loved this film and made a good case as to why it's actually a brilliant movie, which I understand, but it just didn't work for me personally at all. I think they were trying way too hard to go in a very unexpected direction with this, really subvert expectations. And I just didn't think it was interesting. I appreciate it was trying to do something narratively with the whole kind of court system around whether this guy, the Joker, was really, is he like this other persona that comes out of him? Does he have some kind of mental illness, or is this him kind of rallying people up in this revolution? And there was a few interesting discussions to have here, but I just think the way it was executed was done really poorly. I thought the court scenes were boring. I hated the fact they made it a musical. I'm not a musical guy, you know, dark dramas where people start singing at each other. It just doesn't work for me at all. The songs I thought were uninspired. Whilst Lady Gaga obviously does have an incredible voice, I just didn't get into any of it. And I even think as well at the end, they do have that very kind of bold twist, but it just felt like it was trying so hard to do the least most expected thing they could possibly do. So the more I've thought about this film since I've seen it, the more I don't like it. So yeah, this one did not win me over, unfortunately. And yeah, don't think it was the direction to go, but I appreciate there are people that do love this movie, but it was not for me. Number 4, I went with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And this was just such a forgettable movie, I thought. I'm not that big on the Ghostbusters franchise. I do think the original is good fun. And I did actually quite enjoy Afterlife. I liked the new kind of round of characters they set up. Obviously having Paul Rudd in there as well. And I did really enjoy it. So I thought, oh, why not go and see the new sequel to that film? And I just thought it was a massive step down from Afterlife. You just had way too much going on here. You know, lots of different storylines, loads of different characters as well. It was kind of jumping between all these different things, and it felt unfocused to me. I thought they took a bit of a step back in terms of the storylines for each of the characters. You know, like the young girl, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she was definitely one of the standouts about Afterlife. She was very interesting, had a really good storyline. And I just didn't like where they decided to take her character in Frozen Empire. I found that whole storyline a little bit tedious. I felt like trying to force the old cast in once again. It just felt like they were trying way too hard to me. You know, bringing those old cast members back, you could see they were really phoning it in and just cutting a paycheck for them, because it didn't feel like they were enthusiastic about being there. It felt like they just turned up at the end to save the day, and I didn't really feel anything when I saw them come on screen. So it was a movie that isn't terrible, but I just think given the budget, and this great big cast of actors, and you know, given it being such a famous IP and stuff, it should have been so much better. But about a week after I saw this film, I couldn't really remember anything about it. So I just think for that, it has to come down near the bottom of this list for me. Number 3, I'm going with Imaginary. This was one of the early Blumhouse horror films that we got, and I don't remember a thing about this film. Like, if you ask me right now who the main character was, I literally could not tell you. Just absolutely nothing about this movie sticks. I remember the first 2/3 being particularly uninspired, you know, just kind of going through the motions, setting up this group of characters, a few jump scares here and there. And then it does try to do something unique in that final act. I do remember the giant teddy bear in the attic on that checkered floor. It gets a bit sort of dream sequency with all of that final act, and it was trying to do something different, but yeah, just as I say, none of it stuck with me. I left the theatre, and a couple of days later, it was gone. I'd forgotten all about it. So yeah, just another really poor effort from Blumhouse. They really are hit and miss with their horror films, and this one was just a waste of time to us. Just absolutely nothing positive really to say about it, unfortunately. Number 2, okay, now these bottom 2, we're getting into the really bad films. These were the 2 that I actively thought were terrible. Starting at number 2, I'm going with The Crow. And it's funny actually, because I did review the original this year, the 94 film, and at the end of it, I was saying that I couldn't believe what everyone was saying about it being the new one being the worst film of the year. I was like, oh, it's such an overreaction. It's people's love for this original. There's no way this is going to be the worst film of the year. And I went. The curiosity got the better of me, and I went out to see it. And oof, it's pretty dreadful. It's a pretty dreadful film. It's one of those movies where everything about it is wrong. The cast is wrong. The performances are wrong. The script is wrong. Just the tone of it doesn't work. It's an absolute mess of a film. The love interest for the Crow, played by FKA Twigs, she's just not an actress, really. You know, she's a musician, and you can definitely tell that here. I felt a lot of the dialogue between the two of them was absolutely cringeworthy. Bill Skarsgård, such a shame as well, because he is a very talented actor, and I've liked him in everything else that I've seen him in, so I know he's got something good in him, but I don't know whether the role was just wrong for him, or whether he just didn't care, but even he was terrible in this film, which is something I really didn't expect. But there was just no fun in this movie. It's all very dark, very dreary. The running time it just felt double whatever the length of the movie actually was. And yeah, by the end of it, I was just praying for it to be over. That big kind of very gory action sequence does not save it either. It's the one moment people have talked about as kind of being the standout of the movie, but even that I didn't really care about, to be honest. Very CGI-ish as well, and no, didn't work at all. It really didn't work, and especially watching it after that original, just not even in the same league. And I'm not even someone that thinks that original was a masterpiece. So yeah, definitely don't let the curiosity get the better of you like it did me with The Crow, because it's easily one of the worst films we've had all year. And number 1, of course, my worst film of the year is Madam Web. And I did actually watch this one a little bit later, just because again, it was another film where I was a bit curious to see whether people were going overboard with it. You know, is it actually as bad as people are saying? And wow, it is a absolutely terrible movie. And it wasn't even so bad that it was good. I think that's what I was kind of hoping for, that it was so ridiculous and over the top that I'd still have fun with it. But it's not even that. It's just, the worst thing about it is you can see that everybody on set and everybody on board with the project just does not care at all. The performances are so unenthusiastic, it's unbelievable. And, you know, you've got talented actresses here. Obviously, Sydney Sweeney even going on to do better films just after that in stuff like Immaculate. So you know she's got the talent. Obviously, Dakota Johnson as well. Another really solid actress, just seems to love picking terrible films. So whether she just, you know, takes a day's work and goes out to do these rubbish movies, or whether she actually believes in the projects prior to signing on, who knows. But they all distanced themselves from this movie after it was released, and you can definitely see why, because there's just no care and affection that's gone into this movie. Every single scene is bland, the dialogue is embarrassing, the performances are wooden. The villain the villain was absolutely laughable. Not only just a terribly written character, but the performance as well. You can see, obviously, there was some kind of issue where they've either tried to redub the dialogue, or they've changed something about the voice, the sound of the voice or something, because if you watch carefully, you never actually see the villain speaking on screen. It always cuts away behind a wall, or it comes round the back of him as he starts to speak, and it's laughably bad. It's stuff like that where you kind of sit there open-mouthed in shock at what they thought was okay to greenlit as a final product. An absolutely embarrassing film, and I don't understand how they could have watched this in the end and say, yep, that's fine, that's good to go out to audiences. It's a real embarrassment, to be honest. So has to be my absolute worst film of 2024. So that is my 5 worst movies I saw in 2024. But do let me know down in the comments whether you agree with my choices and what you also thought were terrible films that we had come out this year. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. Do take care, and I'll see you next time.